Welcome to today's live event. We are going to be working on something that I had put away for a very long time. And as I'm always trying to motivate you to finish projects, I decided it was time to start listening to my own advice. And I pulled out the blocks that had been, we'll say they were aging. I don't know exactly how do you want to put it. They were just becoming even more valuable, right? As things are put away. And I had made these blocks, I think I figured it was 10 or 12 years ago, and got to a certain point where I had like 60 some blocks made. And then for some reason they got stashed away and never touched again. And as I was walking past them the other day, I was like, okay, it's time to finish. So this is the quilt that ensued because this was made with fat quarters. So if you are one of those people who loves to collect fat quarters, and I'm guilty of stacks of those. If a fat quarter is something new to your terminology, we'll cover that. Don't worry. I decided it's time to make this quilt up. And I didn't really want to add more fabric to it because there were 33 fabrics already involved in this project. And it was made from a fat quarter bundle. And I thought, well, 10 or 12 years down the line, colors do just change a little bit over time. And trying to match it exact was going to be really tough. So what I had was going to be a quilt that was just blocks. And the way that I made these blocks are kind of pre-sashed. So this is the block that we're going to be working on. It's that sawtooth or 8-point star. It has sashing and a cornerstone on one side. And each of the blocks is made from 3 fabrics. So I'm going to go through a tool that we're using to do this, and then a way to get organized so that you can make all of your blocks in the same manner as I did and stay organized and have a success in the end. So I'm Colleen Tauke. I'm your instructor for this live event. And if you are new to joining us, welcome. If you are a return watcher, drop in where you're watching from. Let everyone know what our community is all about. We bring you these free patterns approximately every other week. So the pattern will be available. The QR code is up right now. So all you have to do is shoot your phone at that, over it, and it will take you right to the link that gets you to the pattern so that you can download the pattern. Now, this pattern has a few pages to it. I do agree that it is a little bit longer than some of my patterns, but because it's the organization that we're going to be looking at that will help you through the process, that makes it well worth it. So if you haven't downloaded, grab a piece of paper to write on just to take a few notes so that you remember the things, the little tricks and things that we talked about in the tool that we're going to use. So in order to create this quilt, I came to the end and decided, what am I going to name it? Because it's stars. It's been so long. And that was the day of the super blue moon. So once in a blue moon was the name of this quilt. I put the last stitch in the evening of the super blue moon. So let's talk about how to do all of these wonderful stars. And I'm going to do something that if you've been watching me over the past, I tend to like to do multiple unit kind of techniques. I like to make 8 at a time triangle squares. I like to make 4 at a time flying geese. But today, we're actually going to cut triangles. That's something that you don't usually see me do. But there's a reason for it. Number one, we should always know how to do that really basic construction using actual triangles and where triangles should be placed, if they're half square or quarter square triangles, and why they're put in different places. And we're going to use a tool today that will help us in the cutting process, so that if you're using fat quarters, or even if you're using pre-cut 2.5-inch strips, you can cut all of your pieces except for one. There is a 4.5-inch square in the very center of each of these stars, but everything else is cut from a 2.5-inch strip. So hang with me. I know it's a little bit different. It's a little outside of my box of what I normally teach, but I want you to get used to saying, I can do that construction from triangles without having to do the multiple method. So it's always good to learn those kinds of skills. Frida says good morning. We've got Esther saying good morning, Carolyn from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Bridget from France. So we've got our international quilter with us too. We are glad that you're here. Doris says good morning from Texas. We're waking up the country. We've got Oklahoma, Texas, down through the south. We've gone across the pond to France, and we've gone up into Canada. So we are glad that you're here. Now, in this pattern, this quilt, like I said, was made with 33 fat quarters. That's a lot, I understand, but I'm making a big quilt. This is 80 by 80. And we're going to use everything except for 2 of the blocks. So 2 are going to be kind of orphan blocks put into something else down the line. So the tools that we're going to need are basic, really basic supplies. But there's one thing in there that as you look to the list, you'll see it's a Fons and Porter 1/2 and 1/4 ruler. Now, I'm not usually a big push on too many rulers unless they're fun to use, okay? So I don't get any money from any sales of any tools, okay? But when I find a tool that I like and does the job that it needs to do, then it's a fun tool. Then it's maybe worth the investment. And a lot of us use pre-cut strips. So this is a tool you can use in that. The fat quarter, it works with that. So here is what the tool looks like itself. It's a large triangle. It has numbers reading from this point and numbers that will read from this point. Now, the whole idea is that we can cut 1/2 square triangles off of this portion and 1/4 square triangles using this portion of the tool. The diagram on there will help you remember which orientation and which one you're making so that you can easily see that they're, well, up close. I'm not sure if you can read it or not, but it will tell you how to orient it here and here. So you don't need to hold on to the instructions. The best tool, I think, is the one that is self-contained so that I don't have to go look after directions later to remember how to use it. It's valuable to me if everything is right there. So I'm going to be using things off of a 2.5 inch strip. So 2.5 inch strip down the strip width is down the edge here. So 2.5 is here. So there's a heavy line that I'm going to be using. And then off of this side, again, the strip width is noted on the side. I'm going to be using that 2.5 inch wide strip. And so the line here goes across that I need to use to orient when cutting. So again, that's the Fons and Porter 1/2 and 1/4 ruler. It means 1/2 square triangles and 1/4 square triangles. And we're going to be able to use that to cut all of our triangles. So, okay, let's look at the fat quarter. If you're new to quilting and you haven't collected fat quarters, a lot of us get addicted to going sewing or shopping and then pick up those fat quarters along the way. You usually find them folded, possibly wrapped with a strap around, giving the shop name so you remember where you purchased it. And they're just so inviting because those little pieces that easily pick up that are we call pre-cut. They are, when you open them up, you have a selvage along one edge. The other 3 are all cut. So the selvage to the fold is approximately 22 inches. And it's 18 inches along the selvage edge. So 18 here, and usually very accurately 18. And this can vary a little bit. All fabrics are a little bit different in width. So usually they're approximately 18 by 22. And I diagrammed out the cutting using the fat quarter so that for sure you could cut all of your pieces from fat quarters. So I'm going to put those out of the way here really quick. Now, in your pattern, it will tell you that from each of those fat quarters, you are going to cut the following. And there's kind of a little checklist there. You're going to cut the 2.5 inch square or 4.5 inch square for the centers. You're going to be cutting 2.5-inch squares, the little ones here on the outer corners and in part of the sashing. You're going to be cutting rectangles, which are these kind of like these pre-sashed edges here, two of those that will go in each block. You're going to be cutting half square triangles, which are the star points in our block. And then you're going to be doing quarter square triangles. And those are abbreviated, but they are defined in the instructions. The quarter square triangles are these portions here within the star points themselves. And then it lists the cutting for the binding. But those are the cutting, but let's hold together until we get to the actual diagram so that you know which direction off of the fat quarter you are going to be cutting. Yours may look just a little bit different. For some reason, mine printed with a peach background today instead of a gray. Cassie says, good morning from Florida. Deb says, hello from Iowa, everyone. Yep, that's where I'm from too. And Cynthia says, greetings from San Jose, California. Yep, fun quilt. The Once in a Blue Moon, we've got a lot of fun fabrics in there. So off of our fat quarters, I've noted that this is the 18 here, the 22 here, and you're going to be cutting mostly 2.5-inch strips. But remember, when you get toward the bottom, you're going to take off a couple of those 4.5-inch squares and then the remaining quarter squares from there. Now, you may be able to make a different combination to get all your pieces in, but you will have enough fabric plus a little bit in case your rotary cutter decides it wants to do some other kind of angle. Sometimes that happens when we're cutting. But this will give you the orientation so you get everything cut off of your fat quarters, okay? So when you start with those fat quarters, if they're all folded up and wrinkled and they've been folded for a while like these, or some brights that I've pulled out here, go through and press those all flat so that all of your pieces will lay nice and neat. If they have some really tough creases in them, you can always hit them with a little bit of best press, spray starch, something, so that you start with very flat fat quarter for the cutting. Now, as you cut all those pieces off of each fat quarter, this is my suggestion. Let me back up just a bit. When you've collected your 33 fat quarters, I went through and I grouped them in threes. Okay, so I decided that in this example, the turquoise, the purple, and the pink, wouldn't this be perfect for some little girl? We're always going to be together in combinations. So group them into groups of three. So each has their own little party, okay? And then when you cut them, you'll notice bag one, I assigned everybody a number. It doesn't matter which of the fabrics gets which number because they're all going to get used evenly. All is fair in love and quilting, right? So we've got bag one, bag two, and bag three, okay? So divide them into groups of three. Get yourself some bags. They're just simple Ziploc bags. And then these are the pieces that I actually used my cutting for. And I will demo the cutting in a second. But we've got those little 2.5-inch squares. We've got our rectangles that we're going to need. We've got those 4.5-inch squares for our centers. And then we have half square triangles and quarter square triangles. Okay. And then they're all going to live within that bag until I'm ready to start my coordinating. But let's go back and look at how that half and quarter ruler can help us in our cutting very efficiently. Because there are always times when we do methods that have a little bit of waste. There are methods where we have to trim, and I do that a lot. And some of you are like, I don't like trimming. So guess what? You're not going to trim anything today. So we're going to please everybody in the end. Let's see. We've got Kathy popping in from Rhode Island, Helen from Virginia, Melissa is here from Kentucky, and Barbara from Bonn, Germany. Yay! I'm headed to Germany in November, so that would be fabulous. Probably a little different part of Germany possibly than where you live, but Germany and Austria are a wonderful place to visit. Okay, now I've cut my piece off of my fat quarter, just like it talks about in my cutting diagram. And I'm going to just demo a couple of the two ways we're going to use this, because I'm pretty sure you know how to cut off a square and how to cut off a rectangle. But those half and quarter square triangles are the pieces that this fun tool will help us do. Okay, need my little board again. Now I'm going to line this up on my 2.5 inch strip, and I'm going to cut half square triangles. So I'm going to use the yellow portion of the tool here. And you'll see at the very, very top, there is a solid yellow tiny triangle at the top. That triangle is actually going to hang off my tip of my fabric. So it's not on the strip itself. And I'm going to sit it on the 2.5 inch line, which is right there. And then I can cut my piece. So as I lay that down, I'm making sure that my little yellow tip is hanging off the strip. It's going to sit right on the very top of my strip. The 2.5 inch line goes at the bottom of the strip, and then I can simply go in and cut my pieces. Now, as I cut my piece, and I put this up here, you're going to notice it has a blunt tip. That's okay. The blunt tip up here, that's where the triangle piece kind of hung off of the strip. That's fine. Actually, it's going to help me in my alignment later. So it's a tip that you would normally be cutting off as a dog ear anyway, so it's okay, and it's correctly cut if you have a blunt on one corner. So that's the half square triangle. In order to do more of those, I just rotate the tool, lay the tip at the bottom this time, hanging off the bottom of the strip, line up the 2.5 inch line along the top of my strip, and trim. If at any point I can't really line up the previously cut edge with my ruler, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a little cleanup, just because sometimes the ruler gets a little bit, slides a little. We want to get the perfect little piece cut out of there. So then I just proceed down the strip, looking for those marks at the top and the bottom, and I can easily cut all my half square triangles off of the strip that I need from this fabric. Now, I'm going to flip this around, and we're going to talk about cutting quarter square triangles. The quarter square triangles cut from the other side of the tool with a black triangle at the top. There's a teeny tiny little piece that's going to hang, again, off the strip. And then we're going to go down to the 2.5 inch line. We're going to read along the edge. It says strip width. I'm going to go down to that 2.5 inch line and put that along the bottom of my strip. So that little tiny black triangle hangs off the top. Make sure that I kind of hold my tool very carefully so that my fingers are out of the way for cutting, but I get a nice clean cut, and my quarter square triangle has a little blunted top and is cut properly for its placement. Now, the bias edge on these now is on the short legs here and here. That's where they need to be if they're called a quarter square triangle. Because if I were to take and cut more of them, let me lay this on here really quick so we can get to our construction. If we were to cut 4 of these, we would arrange these like this. Now, the one way most people will cut quarter square triangles is by taking a square and cutting it apart diagonally in both directions. The only problem with doing that is that sometimes when I go to cut those, that corner to corner isn't very accurate and it slides. So this is what, in perspective, the straight of grain is on the long leg of the triangle. The bias edges are all on the interior. That's okay. That's where they're supposed to be. When we do half square triangles, the smaller ones that we're using, the bias edge is on the inside here, and the straight of grain is on the outside. This is the proper alignment that I need for the construction of my blocks. So that's how to use the tool in order to cut the pieces that we need. Now that we know how to use the tool, we can go back and talk about how do I use my instructions to construct the block that I'm going to be making. So we have an overall diagram of the block in your instructions, so you know what we're putting together. We have, let's see, Barbara from Florida. We have hello from Kentucky. Looking forward to the show. Wonderful. Tracy says, I have this ruler, but I forgot how to use it. Well, guess what? You got a tutorial free today. Perfect. So we are going to be making this star block, the sawtooth star block with the sashing on two sides. But we have now made 3 bags of fabric, and what do we do with them? So I'm arranging them in front of me, clean up my space here. We put our tool away for cutting because we've got our 1, 2, 3 bag ready to go. And the fun part is there's a recipe for each of the blocks. Out of those 3 baggies, you're going to make 6 blocks. You've just cut all the pieces for 6 blocks. It's fun. Okay, so now block A through F. So the recipe for each of the blocks is listed so you know what to pull from each bag. Okay, so let's make block A. The recipe from back quarter 1 says I need 1 2.5 inch square, 1 2.5 inch square, and 1 4.5 inch square. So I take out those 2 pieces and the rest go back in the bag. Then it says from back quarter 2, I need 2 rectangles. So get down to the rectangles. 1, 2, and 8 half square triangles. So half squares are the little guys. I need 2, 4, 6, and 8. And that's all I need from bag 2. So I'm back quarter 2. So now I put those back away. See, this is the nice part about this is if you just have a little bit of time to sit down and make a block, just make a block A. And then everything else is bagged. If you've got a cat or grandkids or kids or a husband who might move something, they're in the bag. They're not going to get messed up. So from bag 3, we need 3 2.5 inch squares. No, 4. I'm sorry. We need 4 of those. And that might be a typo. I might have to fix. 1, 2. You know, when you're trying to proofread yourself, it's always a challenge, but those have to be the corners. And then I need 4 quarter square triangles. That's the larger ones. So this is going to be like the background of my star. I started a little low on my mat here, but you can see kind of what I'm doing. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it is in block A. If you've already written down fabric 3, that should be 4 2.5 inch squares because we need 1 in each corner. And then we're going to put it in our little triangles for our star points. Now, as you make these stars, let me move this up a little bit so I have more room. As you make these, you're going to see that there's kind of a pattern to what I was doing so that all of the fabrics get used. Let me see, here we go. The little corner in the outside sashing matches the center square. And then you're going to notice that the sashing matches the star points. And that the background, these quarter squares and squares, are kind of the background behind the star. Okay? So every time you make it, these 2 are going to match, and these 2 fabrics are going to match, and the background is a standalone, so that hopefully the star sometimes pops, sometimes it's a little more soft contrast, which I allowed that to happen just because the fun of your eye looking to see, well, what's going on in this one, then what's going on in this star. So let's do the really basic construction so that we talk about those half squares. So in your instructions, it's going to have you, let's see, get down to the instructions really quick here. You're going to make your flying geese units first, which is the sides of the star here, here, and here. So 1 triangle at a time. right sides together. Remember that little blunted corner that I talked about when we go to put it together? That will give you the place to start for your seam allowance right there. So that as you put it together, that's kind of your telltale sign of, do I have my seam allowance in the right place? Okay. Right sides together, making sure that you're using your best 1/4 inch seam allowance, because it's really going to be a telltale sign if it's too wide or too narrow at this point, because everything is cut to fit. Here is the, if you can see the beginning and the end of my red stitching, you can see where I've come start and where I ended my stitching. We've got Jean saying hello from North Dakota, Kelly from California, Luisa from Spain, and Linda says hello from Central Texas. Wonderful. Okay, now I'm going to treat this with kind of kit gloves because I have bias edges here. I have to be really gentle with these blocks. No manhandling, no stretching. We are going to open this up so press the seam allowance away from the center. So it's toward the half square triangle. I always kind of do a finger press to make sure I get my seam allowance opened up all the way. Then give it a good press. Remember, it's press down, not drag the iron. Okay, we've got one of those done. Now we're going to do the second one, right sides together. And there are going to be times where triangles do match up. It won't happen every single time, but as you work through the process, you'll notice there's just those little telltale signs. Let's see if I can find something to point here. Here is where I'm going to want to do my 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to come out right on the corner of that, where that blunted edge is at. Now, this is the practice in accuracy, actually working with triangles, which a lot of us may have skipped over actually doing in order to do like those multiple block techniques, 8 at a time, 4 at a time kind of things. But we really should know the basics of the construction. Why are they cut this way? What is the best practice? So in order to learn that, we're using a tool that'll give us some practice. Okay, again, I'm going to heat set my seam, which I guess I probably skipped on the last time. Get it warm, then go in and open that up with my finger, trying not to distort, because we're trying to make a flying geese unit that is a rectangle when we're finished. We don't want it to get too stretched. And distortion is going to happen no matter what we do. We're human. The fabric has give. There's humidity in the air, and there's always a little bit of error. But you know, we have to accept that everything isn't going to be perfect at all times, and that we can still have fun making patchwork. Okay, so there is my flying geese unit. And we need to make 4 of those that surround our center star. Once you get the 4 flying geese made, then you're going to be adding a square to each side in order to make a unit, the units that are in the diagrams here. So you're going to make a unit with 2 of these that match, that have the squares on the corners. So right sides together. So your best 1/4 inch seam on each side, so that you have the top and bottom of the block constructed. Okay, we've got Karen from Alaska with us. Yay! And we've got Joyce from Western Australia. We've got, trying to read the name, and it says Beanie, I believe, from Colorado, and Diana from Iowa. Wonderful. So we're going to add the the squares to each corner here, and get that ready for the top and bottom portion of our block. You can really practice that accurate 1/4 inch seaming. And if you want to just make 6 blocks, pick 3 fabrics, make 6 blocks, and maybe make a table runner. two by 3, 6 blocks, easy enough to do. It's one way to practice this. You could also use them as a center of a placemat. If you just wanted to make a few, the fabrics would all be coordinated. You could make 6 placemats by just adding some extra border around those, so that you can use this technique and this block for a lot of different possibilities. Now, when we put the squares on the outer edge of our flying geese units, we're going to press the seam to least resistance, which means we're going to press the seam allowance toward the square, out towards the square. And I'm just going to finger press this. And I want you to notice and be thinking, if you're new to quilting, that you should have a 1/4 inch from the top here down to where this point is. So a 1/4 inch from the outer edge here to that point. And the other thing you should be looking for is from the bottom of your block up to the point where the star fabrics overlap. That should be a 1/4 inch there. So those are your telltale signs that you're being accurate in your seaming and in your pressing, so that your block will fit together nicely. So we're going to make 2 that look like that. And by laying them always back in their place, it's the easiest just to bring everybody back to where, so you keep everything oriented properly. The flying geese that you create on the side, for the sides of the block, you add those to the 4.5 center and press the seam allowances toward the center, because you press these out, these to the center, and this one to the outer edge. You'll have those opposing seams when you go to put your star block together. And then finish with your sashing and cornerstone on, so that you join a square and a rectangle, and then join the remaining rectangle to the side of your block, and then finish by putting the one that has the cornerstone on it to the top of your block. And all of the pressing instructions are included in the pattern, so that you can finish out your blocks so they will look like this. Okay, let's see. We have Diana says hello from Washington State, Diana from Wisconsin, Belinda from Kentucky, Faith from Virginia. We've got the whole entire country awake and thinking about quilting here today. Now, the arrangement of the blocks is the last part that I want to address, because they kind of dance across the quilt. They are not set in straight lines, which you could do. That would be fine too. Remember that the arrangements of blocks are suggestions. Patterns are just jumping off points for you to take the creativity that you have, or how you interpret the quilt, to create something different. So when it comes to arrangement, I want to bring that in really quick so that you look at the arrangement of the blocks. So in this one, I have the orientation. This is a block here, because these 2 fabrics match and these 2 fabrics match. Sometimes it's hard to see where the definition is, but here is a block. And that the telltale sign when I went to try to arrange these, I was always looking for the sashing cornerstone. So the sashing cornerstone is here, and then I put it here. So I've twisted the block back and forth. And in the end, you end up with 4 kind of squares coming together as you get a secondary design going on. But the sashing in this row, the cornerstone's here in the bottom corner, bottom right-hand corner, but then it goes to the top right-hand corner in this row. So look at your instructions. There is a diagram that will show you how they twist and turn, so that you get that kind of dance of the stars across the sky once in a blue moon. Okay, so I think we've got everybody that popped in to say hello. Now, I have a question for you. We are soon going to be in October, and I have 2 projects sitting, waiting, and I want you to tell me, should it be Halloween next? Because we're going to be back in 2 weeks. We're going to be right at that almost, into October thing. Do you want to see a Halloween project next? Or do you want to see a baby quilt next? Because Oh, we have a baby arriving in our family. Number 8 grandchild is due at the end of the year. So of course I'm thinking baby quilts, and I have 2 or 3 or possibilities out there, and I have 2 in the works right now. So if you want to see Halloween, pop in and say Halloween. Or if you want to see a baby quilt, let me know, baby quilt, of what will come up next, because this is a community for you. And I want you to have the ability to voice what your choice is for our next project. And you know that I go in after the show and I read through all the comments and I will tally up who wants to see, how many people want to see Halloween and how many want to see a baby quilt. Eventually you'll see all of them. But for now, I kind of want a little direction on what you want to see. Do you need that extra time to get a Halloween quilt done? It's fairly simple, but it's a fun one to do. And then, or if it's a baby quilt, because like I said, I'm always working on baby quilts because there's always someone arriving in our family. So once in a blue moon, I got it done. Oh, I wanted to show you really quick. Well, I had it hanging up for a photograph there, but I wanted to show you the quilting on the back side of this. So the swirl is what I did to finish this in a gold thread. That antique gold tends to be a thread that really works with a lot of really autumn colored quilts that I do, even those that are into reds and oranges. That gold thread really floats nicely through them. So the quilting was just an overall edge to edge, just getting it done. So it's getting closer to the end of the year. Do you have something on that bucket list that you have not finished and you have not touched? Can it find a time slot to get finished by the end of the year? Find the smallest one, maybe. I got one of the big ones off my list, but it takes time to get them finished. So I will see you again in a couple of weeks. I will decide from your input whether it's Halloween or a baby quilt. And go ahead and download. If you downloaded today, there will be a correction on the one pattern, on the one cut. So it will be coming out again very quickly after the show. I will adjust the cutting on that one because you do need to have 4 2.5-inch squares out of in that little recipe that I gave you. You do have them all cut. You'll just end up with one left and you'll think, why didn't I use all of them? So I will make sure that the recipe for block A is adjusted. So thanks for joining me today.